Welcome to Dreamtale Sleep Stories. Tonight's reading is The Super Shy Superhero. Settle into your bed or sofa and let your shoulders, jaw, and eyelids grow heavy. Inhale slowly. 1, 2, 3, and sigh the air away, allowing the day to fade into quiet dark. With every soft inhale, you invite fresh English phrases. With every gentle exhale, stray thoughts drift farther off. Behind my voice flows a gentle melody, renowned for guiding the mind toward deep relaxation. Keep your eyes closed or follow the captions, whichever feels right. Simply receive the rhythm and resonance of the language. Deep in rest, tonight's phrases will take root like seeds, ready to bloom into stronger English skills with the morning light. When you feel settled, hold that unhurried breath and allow yourself to drift into the tale. The Super Shy Superhero begins now. And when the story's final line has faded, the music will linger a little longer, carrying you gently deeper into sleep. The Super Shy Superhero. Timmy Wilson was 13 years old and the shyest boy in Lincoln Middle School. He was so shy that when the teacher asked him a question, his face turned red like a ripe tomato, and his voice came out as barely a whisper. When someone said hello to him in the hallway, he looked down at his worn sneakers and whispered back so quietly that most people couldn't hear him. When the lunch lady asked what he wanted to eat, he pointed at the food instead of speaking. Even ordering at restaurants made him nervous, so his parents always had to speak for him. Timmy lived with his parents and his 10-year-old sister, Emma, in a small house on Maple Street. His father worked at the local bank, and his mother was a nurse at the town hospital. Emma was everything Timmy wasn't: loud, confident, and never afraid to speak her mind. She had dozens of friends and was always inviting them over for sleepovers and birthday parties. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" his mother would sometimes ask when Timmy refused to answer the phone or hid when visitors came to the house. But Timmy couldn't help being shy. It felt like there was a wall between him and the rest of the world, and every time he tried to break through it, the wall just got higher. Timmy's biggest fear was standing in front of people and talking. Last month, when he had to give a presentation about George Washington to his history class, he stood at the front of the room for 2 full minutes without saying a word. His classmates started giggling, and his teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, finally told him he could sit down and try again tomorrow. But tomorrow never came, because Timmy stayed home sick for 3 days, too embarrassed to face his classmates. The only person at school who was truly kind to Timmy was his best friend, Jake Martinez. Jake was also quiet, but not nearly as shy as Timmy. They had been friends since 2nd grade, when Jake shared his lunch with Timmy after some older kids had thrown Timmy's sandwich in the trash. Since then, they ate lunch together every day, usually sitting at the corner table where they could see everyone but weren't the center of attention. One Tuesday morning in October, Something very strange happened to Timmy that would change his life forever. He was walking to his English class, carrying his heavy backpack and trying to remember if he had finished his homework, when he saw Sarah Patterson coming toward him. Sarah was the most popular girl in 8th grade, with long blonde hair and a bright smile that made all the boys in school nervous. She was walking with her two best friends, Madison and Ashley, and they were laughing about something. As Sarah got closer, Timmy's heart started beating so fast, he was sure everyone could hear it. His palms became sweaty, and his mouth felt as dry as sandpaper. He wanted to say hello, maybe even ask her about the math homework, but the words stuck in his throat like peanut butter. Instead, he felt that familiar burning sensation in his cheeks that meant his face was turning bright red. I wish I could just disappear, Timmy thought desperately as Sarah and her friends walked past him. I wish I could become invisible, so no one would ever have to see me embarrass myself again. At that exact moment, something incredible happened. Timmy looked down at his hands and gasped. He couldn't see them. He held them up in front of his face, but there was nothing there. Panic filled his chest as he looked down at his body. His arms, his legs, his torso. Everything had vanished completely. Timmy ran as fast as his invisible legs could carry him to the nearest bathroom. He pushed through the door and stood in front of the large mirror above the sinks. The reflection staring back at him was nothing. He could see the white tiles on the wall behind where he should have been standing, but he couldn't see himself at all. He was completely, totally invisible. This can't be real, he whispered to himself, his voice echoing strangely in the empty bathroom. This has to be a dream. People don't just become invisible. But as he stood there, trying to convince himself that he was hallucinating, he slowly began to feel calmer. The embarrassment about seeing Sarah faded away, and as it did, he started to see a faint outline of his body in the mirror. Within a few minutes, he had become completely visible again, looking exactly the same as he always had. Timmy stared at his reflection in amazement. His brown hair was still messy from running. His brown eyes were wide with shock, and his face was still slightly red from embarrassment. But he looked completely normal. Had he really been invisible, or was his imagination playing tricks on him? That night, after dinner and homework, and his usual routine of watching TV with his family, Timmy locked his bedroom door and decided to experiment. He sat on his bed, closed his eyes, and tried to remember exactly how he had felt when he became invisible. He thought about feeling embarrassed and wanting to disappear. At first, nothing happened, but then, as he focused harder on that feeling of wanting to hide from the world, he felt a strange tingling sensation starting in his fingers. He opened his eyes and looked down. His hands were becoming transparent, like looking through frosted glass. As he watched in fascination, they became more and more see-through until they disappeared completely. "It's real," he breathed, his voice filled with wonder. "I can actually become invisible." Over the next hour, Timmy practiced controlling his new ability. He discovered that when he felt very shy or embarrassed, he could make different parts of his body disappear. When he was just a little nervous, only his hands would vanish. When he felt moderately embarrassed, his head would become invisible. And when he was completely mortified, his entire body would disappear. The strangest part was that he could still see himself when he was invisible, but he appeared as a faint, shimmering outline that only he could see. It was like looking at a person-shaped piece of clear plastic. For the next few days, Timmy practiced his power every chance he got. He would make himself invisible during boring math classes, though he made sure to answer questions when called upon so the teacher wouldn't get suspicious. He practiced in his room at night, timing how long he could stay invisible and learning to control which parts of his body disappeared. He even tested whether other people could see him when he was invisible. During lunch, he made his hand disappear and waved it in front of Jake's face. Jake didn't react at all, confirming that Timmy was truly invisible to others. But Timmy kept his amazing discovery completely to himself. He was too shy to tell anyone, even Jake. What if people didn't believe him? What if they thought he was crazy? What if they wanted to study him like a science experiment? The thought of all that attention made him feel sick to his stomach. On Saturday afternoon, Timmy was walking through Central Park with his sister Emma. She was chattering excitedly about her upcoming sleepover party, while Timmy listened with half an ear. The park was busy with families having picnics, couples walking their dogs, and kids playing on the playground. As they walked past the big oak tree near the pond, Timmy heard a sound that made his blood run cold. Someone crying. Not just sniffling, but the kind of sobbing that meant someone was really upset. He looked around and saw a little boy, probably around 7 years old, sitting alone on a bench near the playground. The boy had curly red hair and was wearing a striped t-shirt that was now stained with tears and dirt. Standing around the crying boy were 3 older kids, probably around 10 or 11 years old. Timmy recognized them from the neighborhood. They were known troublemakers who liked to pick on smaller kids. The biggest one, a boy with spiky black hair and a mean grin, was holding something in his hand. "Come on, baby, stop crying," the big kid taunted. "We just want your lunch money. It's not like you need it anyway." "Please give it back," the little boy sobbed. "My mom gave me that money for pizza later." "Too bad," said another bully, a girl with purple streaks in her hair. "Maybe next time you'll be smarter and take a different route home." The third bully, a skinny boy with glasses, was keeping watch to make sure no adults were coming. "Hurry up," he told his friends. "Someone might see us." "Give us your sandwich too, little baby," the big bully demanded, reaching into the boy's backpack and pulling out a peanut butter and jelly sandwich wrapped in aluminum foil. Timmy felt a surge of anger, unlike anything he had ever experienced. His hands clenched into fists, and his heart pounded with righteous fury. These bullies were picking on someone even smaller and more defenseless than himself. It wasn't fair, and it wasn't right. But what could he do? Timmy was thin and not very strong. He had never been in a fight in his life. The bullies were bigger than him, and meaner too. If he tried to help the little boy, they would probably just beat him up and take his money as well. Then, like a lightning bolt hitting his brain, Timmy had an idea. He could use his invisible power. He could help the little boy without putting himself in danger. For the first time since discovering his ability, he would use it to help someone else. "Emma," he said to his sister, "I'll catch up with you in a minute. I want to, tie my shoe." Emma shrugged and wandered over to look at the ducks in the pond. Timmy quickly ducked behind the big oak tree and closed his eyes. He thought about how embarrassed he would be if those bullies saw him trying to help and laughed at him. The familiar tingling sensation started in his fingers and spread through his whole body. Within seconds, he was completely invisible. Moving as quietly as he could, Timmy crept toward the bullies. His heart was beating so loudly, he was sure they would hear it, but they were too busy tormenting the little boy to notice anything else. When he was close enough to reach out and touch the biggest bully, Timmy took a deep breath and tapped him on the shoulder. "Hey," the bully yelped, spinning around. "Who touched me?" He looked in every direction, but saw nothing except other park visitors going about their business. Timmy had to cover his mouth to keep from giggling. This was actually working. He moved to the second bully, the girl with purple hair, and gave her a gentle push. She stumbled forward and nearly fell over. "What the heck?" she exclaimed, looking around wildly. "There's no one here. How did I trip?" "Stop being weird, Madison," the big bully said. "There's nobody around us." But Timmy wasn't finished. He crept up to the third bully, the skinny boy with glasses, and carefully removed his glasses from his face. To everyone watching, it looked like the glasses were floating in midair by themselves. "My glasses!" the boy shrieked. "They're flying!" Now all three bullies were looking around in terror. Timmy placed the glasses on the ground and moved toward the little boy. Very gently, he took the lunch money from the big bully's hand and placed it back in the crying boy's palm. The sight of money floating through the air and landing in the little boy's hand was too much for the bullies. "It's a ghost!" the big bully screamed. "This place is haunted! Let's get out of here!" Madison yelled. All three bullies ran away as fast as their legs could carry them, leaving the little boy sitting on the bench with his mouth hanging open in amazement. The boy looked around the empty area and called out in a shaky voice, "Thank you, invisible person. I don't know who you are, but you saved me." When Timmy heard those words, "Thank you," something unexpected happened. His face turned bright red with embarrassment, just like it always did when someone paid attention to him. But here's the problem. When he blushed, his face became visible, even though the rest of his body stayed invisible. The little boy's eyes grew as wide as saucers as he saw a red face floating in the air about 5 feet off the ground. "Whoa," the boy whispered. "You're real! You're really an invisible person!" Timmy was so mortified at being seen that he quickly made his face invisible again and ran away as fast as he could. By the time he reached the oak tree where he had started, his entire body was visible again, and he was breathing heavily from running. "There you are," Emma said, walking back from the pond. "What took you so long?" And why do you look like you just ran a marathon? Just tying my shoe, Timmy panted. It was a really complicated knot. That evening, the little boy went home and told his parents about the invisible hero who had saved him from the bullies. His parents, thinking it was just an imaginative story, smiled and nodded. But the boy was so insistent and detailed in his description that they started to wonder if something unusual really had happened. The boy's father mentioned the story to his neighbor, who told it to the mail carrier, who shared it with the grocery store clerk, who posted about it on social media. Within a few days, everyone in the neighborhood was talking about the mysterious invisible person who helped children in trouble. Most adults assumed it was just a made-up story, but the children believed it completely. Soon, kids all over town were hoping they would encounter the invisible hero and be rescued from whatever problems they faced. Meanwhile, Timmy was both thrilled and terrified by what he had done. He felt proud that he had helped someone, but he was also scared that people might figure out his secret. He started paying more attention to conversations around school and in his neighborhood, listening for any mention of the invisible hero. The next week, Timmy was walking home from school when he heard Mrs. Peterson, an elderly lady who lived 3 houses down from him, crying on her front porch. Mrs. Peterson was a sweet woman in her 70s who always waved to Timmy when he walked by. She lived alone except for her beloved Cocker Spaniel, Fluffy, who had been her companion for 8 years. "Fluffy, Fluffy!" Mrs. Peterson was calling, her voice thick with tears. "Where are you, baby?" Timmy approached her cautiously. Even though he knew Mrs. Peterson was nice, talking to adults still made him nervous. Mrs. Peterson," he said quietly. "Is everything okay?" The elderly woman looked up with red, swollen eyes. "Oh, Timmy dear, it's Fluffy. She's been missing since yesterday morning. I let her out in the backyard for just a few minutes, and when I went to call her back in, she was gone. I've looked everywhere, the whole neighborhood, the park, even the animal shelter. No one has seen her." Timmy's heart went out to the sad old woman. He knew how much Fluffy meant to her. He had often seen them taking slow walks together around the block, with Fluffy patiently matching Mrs. Peterson's careful pace. "I'm sure she'll come home," Timmy said, though he wasn't sure at all. Dogs usually know how to find their way back. "I hope so," Mrs. Peterson sniffled. "She's never been away from home for this long. I'm so worried something terrible has happened to her." As Timmy continued walking home, he couldn't stop thinking about Mrs. Peterson and poor Fluffy. What if the dog was trapped somewhere? What if she was hurt and couldn't get home? What if she was scared and alone? That's when Timmy realized he could help. As an invisible person, he could search places that Mrs. Peterson couldn't. He could look in people's backyards, in abandoned buildings, in spaces that were hard to reach. He could cover much more ground than one elderly woman walking slowly around the neighborhood. After dinner that night, Timmy told his parents he was going to take a walk around the block to get some fresh air. This wasn't unusual. He often went for solitary walks when he felt overwhelmed by family conversation or homework stress. Once he was out of sight of his house, Timmy made himself invisible and began a systematic search for Fluffy. He started with the immediate neighborhood, checking every backyard, every garden shed, every hiding spot he could think of. He looked under porches, behind garbage cans, and in small spaces where a scared dog might try to hide. After 2 hours of searching, Timmy was starting to lose hope. He had covered a 6-block radius around Mrs. Peterson's house and hadn't found any sign of Fluffy. Maybe the dog really had run away, or maybe something worse had happened to her. Just as he was about to give up and go home, Timmy heard a faint whimpering sound coming from the direction of the old Henderson place. The Hendersons had moved away 3 months ago, and their house had been empty ever since. The for sale sign in the front yard was crooked and faded, and the grass had grown tall and wild. Timmy followed the sound around to the back of the house, where he found an old, detached garage that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. The whimpering was definitely coming from inside, and it sounded exactly like a distressed dog. The garage door was locked with a rusty old padlock, but one of the windows was broken and covered with a piece of plywood. Timmy, still invisible, managed to pull the plywood aside enough to squeeze through the window. Inside the dark garage, lit only by the moonlight streaming through the window, Timmy saw a heartbreaking sight. Fluffy was huddled in the corner, thin and obviously dehydrated. Her usually fluffy golden coat was matted and dirty, and she looked up with sad, hopeful eyes when she heard someone enter. "Hey there, girl," Timmy whispered, becoming visible so he wouldn't scare the dog. "Are you okay? How did you get stuck in here?" As he looked around the garage, Timmy pieced together what must have happened. Fluffy had probably been exploring and had somehow gotten through the broken window. But the window was too high for her to jump back out, and she had been trapped in the garage for over 24 hours with no food or water. Timmy gently picked up the exhausted dog, surprised by how light she felt. "Don't worry, Fluffy. I'm going to get you home to Mrs. Peterson. She's been so worried about you." Carrying Fluffy carefully, Timmy climbed back out through the window. Once he was outside, he made himself invisible again. After all, it would be hard to explain to anyone who saw him why he was carrying Mrs. Peterson's missing dog around the neighborhood at night. When he reached Mrs. Peterson's house, Timmy could see that all the lights were on. The poor woman was probably too worried to sleep. He crept up to the front door, still invisible, and gently placed Fluffy on the doormat. Then he rang the doorbell and quickly moved away from the door. "Fluffy!" Mrs. Peterson's joyful cry could be heard through the door. When she opened it and saw her beloved dog sitting there, safe and sound, she burst into tears of relief. "Oh, my baby, where have you been? I was so scared I'd never see you again." She scooped Fluffy into her arms and looked around the empty porch. "But how did you get here? Who brought you home?" Timmy watched from his hiding spot as Mrs. Peterson searched the area with her eyes, clearly puzzled by her dog's mysterious return. "Thank you," she called out to the seemingly empty night. "Whoever brought my Fluffy home, thank you so much. You've made an old woman very happy." And there it was again, someone saying thank you to him. Just like before, Timmy's face turned bright red with embarrassment. And just like before, his red face became visible, even though the rest of his body stayed invisible. Mrs. Peterson gasped and nearly dropped Fluffy when she saw a red face floating in the darkness near her rose bushes. "The invisible hero," she whispered in amazement. "You're real. You brought my dog back." Timmy was so flustered by being seen that his power started acting strangely. Instead of just his face being visible, different parts of his body started appearing and disappearing randomly. For a few seconds, Mrs. Peterson could see a floating hand, then a sneaker, then an elbow. It was like watching someone flicker in and out of existence. "Don't be afraid," Mrs. Peterson called out gently. "I won't tell anyone about you if you don't want me to. But thank you. Thank you for bringing Fluffy home safely." Hearing the kindness in her voice, Timmy managed to get control of his power and make himself completely invisible again. But Mrs. Peterson's words made him feel warm inside. She wasn't scared of him or trying to capture him like some kind of experiment. She was just grateful. The next morning, Mrs. Peterson couldn't resist telling her neighbor about the incredible experience. Her neighbor told someone else, and soon the story had spread throughout the neighborhood. Now everyone was talking not just about an invisible hero who helped children, but one who also rescued missing pets. The local newspaper, the Lincoln Gazette, got wind of the story and sent a reporter to interview Mrs. Peterson. The headline read, "Local woman claims invisible hero returned missing dog." Most people who read the article chuckled and assumed it was just the imaginative story of a lonely old lady. But those who knew Mrs. Peterson well said she was the most practical, down-to-earth person they knew, not someone who would make up wild stories. 3 days later, something happened that would make even the skeptics start to wonder if there really was an invisible hero in Lincoln. Timmy was at the grocery store with his mother, helping her shop for the week's groceries. The Super Save Market was busy, with long checkout lines and customers hurrying to get their shopping done. Timmy was pushing the cart while his mother compared prices on breakfast cereal when he noticed something suspicious happening near the candy aisle. A man in his 20s, wearing a worn baseball cap and a jacket despite the warm weather, was acting very strangely. He kept looking around to make sure no one was watching him, and every time he thought the coast was clear, he would slip something into his jacket pockets. Timmy watched for a few minutes and realized the man was stealing candy bars, gum, and other small items. Timmy felt that familiar surge of anger at seeing someone do something wrong. Stealing was against the law, and it wasn't fair to the store owner, who was just trying to make an honest living. But what could Timmy do? He couldn't just walk up to the man and accuse him of stealing. That would require talking to a stranger, which was terrifying enough. Plus, the man might get angry or even violent. But he could use his invisible power to stop the thief. "Mom," Timmy said quietly, "I'm going to look at the magazines while you finish shopping." "Okay, honey, just don't wander too far," his mother replied, still focused on comparing cereal prices. Timmy walked toward the magazine rack near the front of the store. But as soon as he was out of his mother's sight, he ducked into an empty aisle and made himself invisible. Then he hurried back toward the candy section, where the thief was still at work. The man had just slipped 2 more chocolate bars into his jacket when Timmy decided to act. Moving as quietly as possible, Timmy reached into the man's jacket and pulled out one of the stolen candy bars. To anyone watching, It would look like the candy bar was floating out of the man's pocket by itself. "What the?" the thief started to say, but stopped when he saw the chocolate bar floating in mid-air. His eyes went wide, and he looked around frantically to see if anyone else was witnessing this impossible sight. Timmy moved to the man's other pocket and removed another candy bar, making it dance through the air before floating it back to the candy display where it belonged. "This can't be happening," the thief muttered, backing away from the floating candy. "This isn't real." But Timmy wasn't finished. One by one, he removed all the stolen items from the man's pockets. 3 more chocolate bars, 2 packs of gum, a bag of mints, and a candy necklace. Each item floated through the air like it was being carried by invisible hands, which of course it was. By now, other customers had started to notice the strange spectacle. A woman with 2 small children pointed at the floating candy and said, "Mommy, look, the candy is flying." An elderly man rubbed his eyes and put on his glasses, wondering if his vision was playing tricks on him. A teenage employee stopped restocking shelves to stare in amazement at the supernatural candy parade. The thief, meanwhile, was becoming more and more panicked. "I'm sorry, okay?" he said to the empty air around him. "I won't steal anything. Just leave me alone." Timmy guided the last of the stolen items back to their proper places on the shelves. Then, in a stroke of inspiration, he gave the thief a firm but gentle push toward the store manager's office at the front of the store. "Hey!" the man protested as he stumbled forward, seemingly pushed by nothing. "Stop pushing me!" But Timmy kept pushing, herding the confused thief toward the front of the store, where the manager was talking to a cashier about the day's sales figures. "This man was stealing candy," Timmy said in his loudest voice, though of course, no one could see him. "I saw him put chocolate bars and gum in his pockets." The store manager, a middle-aged woman named Carol, looked around in confusion. She had heard a young boy's voice clearly, but she couldn't see any young boys in the immediate area. "Who said that?" she asked. The thief, now completely panicked, started pulling his empty pockets inside out to show they were empty. "I wasn't stealing anything. The invisible kid took everything out of my pockets. There's a ghost in your store." Carol looked at the man like he was crazy, but she had heard too much commotion not to investigate. He called over her security guard, a large man named Frank, and asked him to check the security cameras. Sure enough, the cameras showed the man taking items from the candy aisle and putting them in his pockets. They also showed the same items mysteriously floating out of his pockets and back to the shelves, though they couldn't show who or what was making them float. "I've never seen anything like this in 20 years of security work," Frank said, scratching his head as he watched the replay. "But the cameras don't lie. This guy was definitely stealing." The thief was escorted to the manager's office to wait for the police, muttering the whole time about invisible children and flying candy. The other customers, who had witnessed the event, stood around talking excitedly about what they had seen. "It must have been the invisible hero," said the woman with 2 children. "I heard about him on the news. The one who helped that little boy in the park and found Mrs. Peterson's dog?" asked the elderly man. "I thought that was just stories." "Maybe it's not just stories after all," the teenage employee said, looking around the store with new respect. "Maybe we really do have a guardian angel watching over us." The store manager decided to thank their mysterious helper, even though she couldn't see him. "Thank you, invisible hero," she called out to the seemingly empty store. "You saved us from losing merchandise and helped us catch a thief. We're very grateful." And there it was again, those two words that always made Timmy's face turn red. Thank you. This time, though, something even stranger happened than just his face becoming visible. Timmy was so nervous about being in a crowded store with all these people looking around for him that his power started malfunctioning in a completely new way. Instead of just his face appearing, his whole body started blinking in and out of visibility very rapidly. Visible for half a second, invisible for half a second, visible, invisible, like a human strobe light. All the customers in the store gasped and pointed as they saw a 13-year-old boy flickering in and out of existence right there in the cereal aisle. "It's him," someone shouted. "It's the invisible hero." "He's just a kid," someone else exclaimed. "How is he doing that?" a third person wondered aloud. Timmy was so embarrassed by all the attention that he couldn't control his power at all. He kept blinking in and out of sight, faster and faster, like a broken light bulb. Finally, he managed to make himself completely invisible and ran out of the store as fast as his legs could carry him. He didn't stop running until he reached the park 3 blocks away, where he sat on a bench and tried to catch his breath. His heart was pounding and his hands were shaking from the adrenaline and embarrassment. But as he sat there, Timmy realized something important. Even though he had been embarrassed, even though his power had gone haywire, he felt good about what he had done. He had stopped a thief and helped the store owners. He was using his strange ability to make the world a little bit better, one small act at a time. When Timmy got home, his mother was putting away groceries and talking excitedly to his father. "You'll never believe what happened at the store today," she was saying. "Someone was stealing candy, and this invisible person caught him. Everyone saw candy floating through the air, and then a boy appeared and disappeared like magic. People are saying it's the same invisible hero who's been helping people around town." "That sounds pretty unbelievable," Timmy's father said with a smile. "Are you sure you weren't imagining things?" "I know how it sounds, but I saw it with my own eyes, and so did about 20 other people. It was definitely real." Timmy's sister Emma bounced into the kitchen, having overheard the conversation. "Mom, did you really see the invisible hero? That's so cool. I wish I could meet him." "I wonder who he really is," his mother mused. "He sounds like a very brave person, whoever he is." Timmy felt a warm glow in his chest as he listened to his family talk about the invisible hero's good deeds. They had no idea that their quiet, shy son was the person they were discussing so admiringly. The next day at school, the invisible hero was all anyone could talk about. Even the teachers were discussing the strange events during their lunch break. The story had made the front page of the Lincoln Gazette with the headline, Mysterious invisible hero catches thief at local grocery store. Multiple witnesses confirm supernatural event. Timmy's best friend Jake was especially excited about the story. At lunch, he couldn't stop talking about all the theories people had about who the invisible hero might be. Some people think he's an alien, Jake said, taking a bite of his turkey sandwich. Others think he's a government experiment that escaped from a lab. My favorite theory is that he's a regular kid who got superpowers from a radioactive spider or something, like in the comics. What do you think? Timmy asked, trying to keep his voice casual. I think he's probably just a normal person who discovered he had this amazing ability and decided to use it to help people, Jake said thoughtfully. I mean, think about it. He only shows up when someone really needs help. He's not trying to get famous or make money. He just wants to do good things. That's a really nice way to think about it, Timmy said, feeling a surge of affection for his friend. I wish I could meet him, Jake continued. I'd want to tell him that what he's doing is really cool. It must be scary sometimes, using powers that make you different from everyone else. But he's being really brave about it. Timmy felt tears prick his eyes. Without realizing it, Jake had described exactly how Timmy felt. Scared, but trying to be brave. Different, but wanting to help. It made him want to tell Jake the truth more than ever, but he still wasn't ready for that level of trust. That afternoon, as Timmy was walking home from school, he noticed a police car and an ambulance parked outside the apartment building on Elm Street. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk, and everyone looked worried. Timmy approached cautiously and overheard two women talking about what was happening. It's Mrs. Chen's little boy, one woman was saying. He was playing on the fire escape and somehow fell through the gap in the railing. He's stuck on the ledge of the second floor, and the fire department is trying to figure out how to get him down safely. Oh no, the other woman replied. That poor child must be so scared. Timmy looked up at the building and saw exactly what the women were talking about. A boy who looked to be about 5 years old was sitting on a narrow concrete ledge about 15 feet off the ground. He was crying and holding on tightly to the edge of the ledge, clearly terrified. Below him, firefighters were setting up a ladder, but it was taking time because they had to position it carefully to avoid startling the boy and causing him to fall. The boy's mother, Mrs. Chen, was standing on the sidewalk in tears, calling up to him to hold on and not be afraid. Just a few more minutes, sweetie, she called. The firefighters are coming to get you. But Timmy could see that the little boy was getting tired. His grip on the ledge was weakening, and he was crying so hard he could barely catch his breath. What if he fell before the firefighters could reach him? Timmy looked around at all the people watching, the firefighters, the police officers, the worried neighbors. There were too many witnesses for him to use his invisible power to help. Or was there? Then Timmy had an idea. He couldn't make himself invisible in front of all these people, but he could create a distraction that would give him a chance to help. Timmy walked up to the fire chief, a tall man with gray hair and a kind face. Even though talking to authority figures terrified him, this was an emergency. "Excuse me, sir," Timmy said quietly. "I think I know another way to reach the boy." The fire chief looked down at him with surprise. "What's that, son?" "There's a tree on the other side of the building that grows really close to that ledge," Timmy said, pointing around the corner. "If someone could climb the tree, they might be able to reach across and help him." The fire chief's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. Johnson, take a couple of men and check out the tree this young man is talking about." As the firefighters hurried around to the other side of the building, Timmy slipped away from the crowd. He ducked into the alley next to the apartment building and quickly made himself invisible. But instead of climbing the tree like he had suggested, Timmy had a better plan. The fire escape ladder went all the way up to the 3rd floor, and no one was watching it because all the attention was focused on the front of the building where the boy was stuck. Timmy quietly climbed the fire escape to the 3rd floor, then carefully lowered himself down toward the ledge where the little boy was sitting. Because he was invisible, it would look to everyone below like the boy was being helped by thin air. "Hey there," Timmy whispered gently as he reached the ledge. "Don't be scared. I'm here to help you." The little boy looked around in confusion. He could hear a voice, but he couldn't see anyone. "Who's there?" the boy whimpered. "I'm a friend," Timmy said, sitting down on the ledge next to him. "I'm invisible, so you can't see me, but I'm real. My name is, Hero. I'm here to help you get down safely." "Are you a ghost?" the boy asked, but he sounded more curious than scared now. "No, I'm not a ghost. I'm just a person who can become invisible. Can you do me a favor? Can you close your eyes and hold on tight to me? I'm going to help you climb back up to the fire escape." The little boy hesitated for a moment, then nodded bravely. "Okay, Mr. Hero, I trust you." Very carefully, with the boy holding tightly to his invisible arms, Timmy helped him climb the short distance back up to the fire escape platform. To everyone watching from below, it looked like the boy was climbing by himself, but several people commented that he seemed to be moving much more confidently than before, as if someone was helping him. Once they reached the safety of the fire escape, Timmy helped the boy climb down the ladder. When they were just a few feet from the ground, Timmy whispered, "Okay, you can let go now. You're almost down. Your mommy is waiting for you." The little boy dropped the last few feet and ran straight into his mother's arms. Mrs. Chen sobbed with relief as she hugged her son tightly. "How did you get down, baby?" she asked through her tears. "The firefighters were still getting ready to help you." "The invisible hero helped me, Mommy," the boy said excitedly. "He talked to me and helped me climb up to the fire escape. He said his name was Hero and that he was my friend." The crowd of onlookers looked at each other in amazement. Could it really be true? Had the mysterious, invisible hero struck again? The fire chief scratched his head and looked up at the ledge, then at the fire escape. "I don't understand how he managed to get from that ledge to the fire escape on his own. It should have been impossible." "Maybe it wasn't on his own," said one of the neighbors who had been watching. "Maybe he really did have help from someone we couldn't see." Mrs. Chen looked around the crowd and spoke in a loud, clear voice. "If there really is an invisible hero here, thank you for saving my son. I don't know who you are, but you have my eternal gratitude." Timmy, still invisible and standing at the edge of the crowd, felt his face turn red at her words of thanks. But this time, he was ready for it. He had been practicing controlling his power when he felt embarrassed, and he managed to keep his face invisible even while blushing. As the crowd began to disperse and the emergency vehicles drove away, Timmy slipped back into the alley and made himself visible again. He walked home feeling proud and happy. He had helped save a little boy's life, and no one had been hurt. But when he got home, Timmy found his family gathered around the television, watching the local news. A reporter was standing in front of the apartment building, interviewing Mrs. Chen and several witnesses about the miraculous rescue. This marks the fourth confirmed sighting of Lincoln's so-called invisible hero. The reporter was saying, "Local authorities are baffled by these events, which seem to defy all logical explanation. Some residents are calling him a guardian angel, while others believe there may be a scientific explanation for these apparently supernatural occurrences." The camera cut to an interview with the little boy, who was sitting on his mother's lap and speaking in the matter-of-fact way that young children do. "He was invisible, but he was really nice," the boy said. "He told me not to be scared, and he helped me climb. I couldn't see him, but I could feel him helping me. He said his name was Hero." Timmy's father shook his head in amazement. 4 incidents now. This can't all be coincidence or mass hysteria. Something unusual is definitely happening in this town. "I think it's wonderful," Emma said, bouncing on the couch. "We have our own real-life superhero. I hope I get to meet him someday. He seems to show up whenever someone really needs help," Timmy's mother observed. "Whoever he is, he's using his abilities to make our community safer." That night, as Timmy lay in bed thinking about the day's events, he realized that his life had changed completely since discovering his powers. He was still the same shy, quiet boy he had always been, but now he had a secret identity that allowed him to be brave and helpful in ways he never could have imagined. He thought about all the people he had helped: the little boy in the park, Mrs. Peterson, the store owners, and now the child who had been stuck on the ledge. Each time he used his powers to help someone, he felt a little bit stronger and more confident. But he also knew that his biggest challenge was yet to come. The more he used his powers, the more attention he attracted. How long would it be before someone figured out his secret? And what would happen when they did? As he drifted off to sleep, Timmy had no idea that his most dangerous adventure was waiting for him just around the corner, and that it would force him to make the hardest decision of his young life.